All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for being in group tonight. Glad that you guys took some time to move out of sitting in rows on Sunday morning to sitting in circles throughout the week. We think discipleship happens best in small group, and that's why we're excited. I know a lot of you are just getting going again with your small groups, and so we're glad you guys are back together meeting again, or maybe even some of you seeing this outside of a group and just taking time to do some deeper study on your own. So what we've been talking about the last couple weeks is our series Start the Party. And the big idea behind the whole series is that transformation invites celebration. You know, there's a lot of things in life we celebrate, but really not that many that deserve celebration. But one thing that deserves celebration every time is when somebody meets Jesus and their life is transformed. Transformation invites celebration. And so thinking about that, we have looked at Jesus's words on this subject in Luke chapter 15, and what we've seen over the last 3 weeks are three stories that really tell the same story. Something's lost, something's found, and then they throw a party. And the first week we saw that the thing that was lost was a sheep. And what we learned from the story of the lost sheep is that God is a God who is actively on mission. It's not left to us to do, but that God is active in this world, redeeming and reconciling a lost world to himself. A couple weeks ago, we looked at the lost coin. And in the story of the lost coin, it helped us understand a little bit about our own lostness better. And that when we understand our own lostness better, it increases the amount of love that we have for Jesus. When we realize what we were saved from, it grows our faith. And then this last week, we saw the story of a lost son. And what we saw is that maybe even the lost son wasn't the point of the story. Maybe it was the older brother. And we looked at how so many of us are like that older brother, content to sit on the sidelines and not to join God in his mission to redeem and reconcile the world to himself. And so what I want to do tonight is look at a little bit different text and how it relates to that story of the lost son and the older brother, and really draw a distinction on the difference between the younger son and the older son, and why the younger son ended Jesus' story in the party and the older son ended outside of the party. So I'm going to take and look at your Bibles tonight in Romans chapter 9, verse 30. You can pause it, take time to turn there. Romans chapter 9, verse 30, Paul says this. He says, "What shall we say then? Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have obtained righteousness, namely the righteousness that comes from faith. But Israel, pursuing the law of righteousness, has not achieved the righteousness of the law. Why is that? Because they did not pursue it by faith, but as if it were by works." You know, you may see that and maybe not think that there's a direct connection there between the story of the lost son that we read Sunday, but I do think that there is. I think there's a huge connection there. I think when we look at that lost son, we can see what Paul is talking about the Gentiles, that he did not pursue righteousness. That was not what the younger son was after. He went to live a life full of pleasure and, desire and just really do what he wanted to do. And he was not pursuing righteousness. But at the end of the story, if we understand the party as heaven, if we're to understand him being accepted and invited into the party as his salvation, he's the one who received righteousness. Why? Because he received it and pursued it by faith. By faith. And that's faith not in how he would come back to the Father, how he would serve the Father, but faith in the Father to receive him. And then you look at the older brother, like the nation of Israel, Paul talks about, that they pursued righteousness, but they pursued it through the law. And that older brother pursued righteousness through his obedience, his faithfulness to the Father. He says, "Look, I've been with you all these years, and I've never done anything wrong." But what we find out is that when you pursue that righteousness, you're never going to get there, and it's not the righteousness that we should be after. And so the older son winds up outside of the party. It's a pretty interesting concept, too, especially when we look at this text, because this idea of pursuing righteousness, what we see is that the older son and the younger son, the Gentiles and Israel, were pursuing two different types of righteousness. Matter of fact, if you look back at the text, it says in verse 30, they did not pursue righteousness, but have obtained righteousness, namely, and here it is, a specific type, the righteousness that comes from faith. And then verse 31, it says that Israel pursued the law of righteousness and have not achieved, here it is, a specific type, the righteousness of the law. And so I think even there's two different types of righteousness, right? There's a type of righteousness that we can attempt to earn but never earn, and there's a type of righteousness that comes only through faith. And I think if you're to look at Paul's argument throughout the book of Romans, and we'll summarize it here, the answer here is this: the righteousness that comes through faith is a specific type of righteousness, but it's also a specific person's righteousness. The righteousness that comes through faith is the very righteousness of Jesus Christ himself. And so when we, by faith in who Jesus said he was and what he said he did, when we put our faith in Jesus, we receive that righteousness by faith. Not just any righteousness, not a generic righteousness, but we receive the perfect righteousness of Jesus through our faith in him. And so the question is left to ask: which would you rather have? Would you rather have a righteousness of your own that you work for but can never fully attain, or would you rather have the perfect righteousness of Jesus? And the only way we get that perfect righteousness of Jesus is through faith. We don't earn it on the front end. We don't pay it back on the back end. It's something that is a free gift given and received by faith. And so that's why I love that verse. It said, why is it that the nation of Israel, why is it that the older brother didn't receive righteousness? And why is it that the Gentiles and the younger brother did receive righteousness? Israel, the older brother, didn't receive it because they did not pursue it by faith, but as if it were by works. So make sure, as you think about this and talk about this, that we don't use our obedience and our good behavior as a way to earn righteousness on the front end or pay it back on the back end, but that our salvation, our righteousness, our hope is based on nothing but faith in the person and work of Jesus Christ on the cross. Anyway, we're going to leave some discussion questions for you in the section below, so hope you guys have a good night digging into this and the rest of the series just a little bit.